have to wonder, when you have military training within a conservancy, then what are you conserving? So in other words, it means you have registered your land as a conservancy, but you partake other activities that are completely contradictory and that are conflicting with the terms and intent and mannerism of conservation. When Nana was signing this land, he could not understand how someone would own land. And sometimes we laugh at Lenana, and we even forget that the Kikuyus themselves had sold Mount Kenya for 20 sheep and goat. As early as 1970s, there is a white man who had a title to Mount Kenya. The former poachers rebranded themselves to be conservancies with very selfish and ulterior motives to hold legitimately what they did not acquire legitimately. It's a term to legitimize this hold of land that they did not acquire genuinely. For the master is, as I pointed out, grass is their livelihood. The master is, when there is rain and there is grass, then they are a happy community and a happy people. So you cannot stop them from going to graze where the military are training, because the cows, there's grass there. And they did not, the risks that they were taking and the benefit, they are outweighing the dangers. And I mean, it's their land and they're not being paid for even it. So they could not stop feeding their cows on this grass. Now this grass is even raised with a lot of military residue and military waste. In a single training, the kind of military waste that emanate from that training can fill 6 containers. So you can imagine this military residue left within these rangelands for the community, and their cows are grazing there.
Honestly, I feel like the roads are designed to favor off-road trucks and not my legs as an individual.
Correct.
Not me as a native. Why is that by design?
It's by design, because having good roads will deplete the whole idea of game drive. So when they say game drive, they mean game, they mean wild. So when you have very smooth roads leading to them, then you are killing the idea of the real idea of game drive as they want it to appear. One day have a walk at Treetops Hotel. Treetops is quite famed for being the hotel where the queen, the first, Queen Elizabeth, became a queen while she climbed on a tree, as a princess, and came down as a queen. At Treetops, you will find the history of poaching. The idea of building Treetops was for it to be a poaching spot.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of LNS. My name is Lynn Ngugi, and as always, we get to meet for another episode where we get to learn and relearn. Now, I happened to visit Laikipia, and I'm sitting here with a gentleman who is going to enlighten us. And truthfully, the first time I saw that 40% of Laikipia is owned by white settlers, I was like, what's happening? How can 48 ranches occupy almost the whole of Laikipia? And then, the funny thing, and we have to speak about it, is the realization that these ranches or this land is owned by the generations and generations and generations of our colonial master. I don't understand what is happening here, but I got an opportunity to just travel around, and we met incredible people, and you'll be listening to some of them as we are doing this interview, who honestly don't feel like they belong here. There are so many land injustices happening, and just seeing these people and hearing their stories, to be honest, some of it broke my heart. Me and my team, we were just looking at them and we were like, how can you live like this? By the way, Laikipia is like a totally different place where the natives live one life and then the settlers, they live a different life. I'm happy that I have our guest today who is going to help us learn and relearn, and also tell us what solutions can we come up with, or what is happening to be able to protect the natives' land. I'm about to let him introduce himself so that he can be able to walk us through this conversation. But before I do that, of course, I have to say thank you so much to you guys for being active participants of our work. You've walked this journey with us. We are almost at 1.2 million subscribers, and I love that you continue sharing, you continue taking notes, and we continue educating each one of us one story at a time, and also to say thank you to my incredible team who gets to travel and document these stories. I've always said if I was to pan this camera the other way, you would get to see it takes an entire tribe to be able to put this work together. So I appreciate you guys. And now, of course, without further ado, please allow me to let my guest today introduce himself. Sir, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very much fine.
How are you feeling?
I do feel great.
Yes.
It's been happy having you. And thank you so much, Lynn, and also to the viewers for even hosting me when you're celebrating 1.2 million viewers. And I'm happy because this is generally a Kenyan, audience, a homegrown audience. And this is very impressive, and I'm happy to be
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice to have you. I follow you on X. I'm a fan of all the spaces that happen there.
Thank
I
you.
love that we have different platforms where we are educating each other. But before we get into this very much heated conversation, for the people who are maybe seeing you for the very first time, looking at that camera, could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
My name is Kelvin Kubai. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I'm a litigator, especially on constitutional and environmental issues. I've worked with various communities in Laikipia and other counties, especially on historical environmental injustices, historical land injustices, and more so even tortious liabilities. Yeah.
All right. Before we even get started, as I said, thank you for taking your time to even be part of this conversation. But let's start. Why is Laikipia a point of interest in this conversation?
I think Laikipia is the last bastion of colonial era and the colonial period of Kenya. In Laikipia, as you said, Lynn, you get to experience two different lives. There's one life for the white remnant and settlers, and there's the life for the natives. There's so many injustices in Laikipia that sometimes, you really have to wonder, how did this come to be? And I'm happy with your introduction that this is a platform to learn and relearn. Because from what maybe most of us have studied in school, and coming up in Laikipia, you really get to experience a very different coin, especially of known terms like conservation, like tourism. You really get to understand the other side of it, and you have to now ask yourself genuine questions like, is this really in line with what you're learning in school, or even what the government policy is on such issues?
Let's go. I love that you've said we get to understand. Let's learn, because for us to be able to understand how we got here, it's very important for us to go back to history. How did we get here? If you could walk us through, post-independence, pre-independence, and how did we get to having such a beautiful county being occupied by white settlers?
Thanks so much, Lynn. I think most of our viewers here might have heard of one documentary that premiered on the battle for Laikipia. And most of the themes that were on this documentary were, on climate change and how this climate change has led to effect within communities, especially in Laikipia. But that's not entirely true. When you have to understand Kenya's history, especially now in Laikipia, we have to go back to the Imperial British East African Company and the 1904 and 1911 Maasai Agreement, because that is the genesis of the injustices we do see in Laikipia today. And to understand this better, we must have an approach of what were the land tenure systems before this time, before the 1904 and 1911 Maasai Agreement. Sitting here today, someone may easily judge Lenana as being quite naive and literate to sign off so much land, and to sign off his community. Most of us would call him sellout. But when you step into Lenana's shoes and understand what he really thought at the time he was signing this agreement, you may be able to understand a different side of the story. At the time when Lenana was signing this agreement, the land tenure systems in Kenya, communities used to own land as communities. In fact, the idea of someone owning private property, like land, was very alien. The Maasais knew that the only way you can own land is what you put on the land, but not the land. So if you have a cow on the land, the cow is yours, but the land is not yours. If you have a sheep or a goat on the land, the sheep and goat is yours, but not the land. And same way with the agrarian communities like the Kikuyu, like the Maasai, like the Meru, Kambas, the part of the Kalenjin and other agrarian communities. If you had maize and beans on the land, the maize and beans is yours, but the land is not yours. And that is why there was a concept of excommunication. Someone would, there were those crimes you committed and people chased you away. And you would not say, no, you can't get me out of my land because the land is not yours. So when Lenana was signing this land, he could not understand how someone would own land. And sometimes we laugh at Lenana, and we even forget that the Kikuyus themselves had sold Mount Kenya for 20 sheep and goat. As early as 1970s, there is a white man who had a title to Mount Kenya. And these communities cannot understand how someone can own land, how someone can own a mountain. Perhaps even to make you understand much better about this is if you ever went to have maybe, you went for a holiday to Diani. And at the beach, someone comes and tells me, hey, sell me 10 acres of this ocean. You would actually laugh at them, cut a very bad deal, take any dollar that you can take from him, and even go telling friends how you met a fool and sold 10 acres of the ocean.
Wow.
So that is what Lenana thought, that there are some people here who want to own land. So he could not understand whether they'll put that land in a bag, put the soil in a bag, and take it back to London, or what they will do with that soil. Because for the Maasai, they don't care who owns the title. What they care is the grass, because the cows need the grass, but not the soil. And now, when he signed off the 1904 and 1911 Maasai Agreement, a group of Maasais, I would say this is one of those landmark decisions in the history of litigation in this country. The Maasai is led by a very middle-aged Moran by the name Olegirisho, Pasaloi Olegirisho. And I'm quite happy the other day I met some members who say that they are from his lineage. So Pasaloi Olegirisho takes the takes the empire to court on grounds that Lenana did not have capacity to sign off the land of the community. And he argued that due to this forced eviction of the Maasais from this tract of land, they deserved compensation. At that time, he was seeking about 5,000 euros, which I don't know how much that will be on today's monetary terms. This is, while he lost that case, because he ideally lost the case on technicality basis, and the technicality was that the 1904 and 1911 Maasai Agreement, the 1911 agreement, in other words, replaced the 1904 agreement. And they say that since this is an agreement that was done between two nations, they assumed the Maasai was a nation. Now, in international law, states, there is principles on the equality of states, meaning that one state cannot be subjected to the municipal laws of another state, because ideally all states are presumed to be equal. So they say that the Maasai is a nation, and as long as the Maasai exists to be a race, this agreement will remain to be enforced. And they say that since now Maasai is a nation, it entered into an agreement with another nation now, the United Kingdom, and so that agreement could not be interpreted by any court. And the Olegirisho appealed, and the good thing is he actually had sued both the British and some other African elders, including Lenana, saying that they did not have capacity to sign off that agreement. So he appealed, he lost the appeal, and at the time he was being helped by some other quite right-looking MPs in England and a Scottish doctor. And actually, at the time, the British were, quite. They knew there was a very high chance that they could lose this case, and if they lost that case, they would have to compensate quite a lot of money to the Maasais for the forced eviction and for this null and void agreement. And they were afraid that if the Maasai had actually appealed at the Privy Council, there was a very a high chance and likelihood of success in that appeal. And those agreements would have been repudiated, and the masses would have been restored in Laikipia. So we see now an injustice that has been legalized through this technicality in court. And fast forward now to 1963, when we gain our independence. And following this independence, we get to see now most of these white foreigners leave. And in the process of leaving, the then President Jomo Kenyatta brought in a land policy that was buying a willing buyer, willing seller. But this is the greatest injustice with this concept, because it is actually the genesis of the land injustices we have, especially in Laikipia. The communities, it's maybe, let's assume you stole someone's phone. I know, Lynn, you wouldn't steal, but assuming you stole someone's phone, and you steal the phone and you run, and then someone else catches up with you and says, hey, Lynn, I saw you steal that phone, bring it here. So they take the phone from you. But instead of returning this phone to the person whom the phone was stolen from, they give it to someone else.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, you steal a phone from me, you run, you're caught, but instead of the phone being returned to me, it's given to someone else. That is what happened with this concept of willing buyer, willing seller. Because the communities who the land had been taken forcibly from them, this land was not restored to them. Instead, this land was given to others, especially now these elite who came up with the new Kenyan government, people who could afford to take loans from the African Corporation Bank and be able to buy off these lands. So we've now a vulnerable community whose land was taken away, and this land has not been restored to them. They've even been made more impoverished now, you know, by this regime. And a number of other white settlers remained, and now they still have, their families still have so much inheritance, especially in Laikipia. And I've seen those, that article circulate so much, actually, and it's true about it. Most of us may remember at around 2021, there was a fire incident within Loldaiga Conservancy, one of the conservancies within Laikipia. Loldaiga is 49,000 acres. You know, sometimes people don't understand how much land is if they don't view it, you know, in relationship to another parcel of land they know. So to most of our viewers who know Nairobi CBD, it's 4,000 acres. So you can imagine now, if Loldaiga is 49,000 acres, it means you can do your math and see how many Nairobis you can fit within just one single ecosystem. So this fire that came around within Loldaiga Conservancy was lit by British forces who happened to train within the conservancy.
Whoa, hold, because I'm about to ask something.
Yes.
You just introduced a new term to us.
Yes.
A conservancy.
Yeah.
And here you are telling me there's a conservancy that is 12 times the size of Nairobi, potentially being owned by one particular person.
Yeah.
What's a conservancy, and how did they end up owning so much land in terms of conservancy?
I would say conservancy, at the face of it, you know, you have the word conserve. But the activities of the administration and the management of these conservancies, like in Loldaiga, where the British Army were training, you may wonder, what were they conserving? While you have these hated military activities within a conservancy. So a conservancy differs in definition. From where we stand, it's supposed to mean a safe haven where animals can be able to live. But from the eyes of the owners of these conservancies, it's a term to legitimize land that they hold unjustly. You know, it's like when they actually took these lands, they were not conserving anything. In fact, they were ranchers. They used to keep cattle, and they used to sell the cattle and supply the meat to KMC, Kenya Meat Commission. Then post-independence, they started to understand that if they keep on keeping cattle and competing for the meat market with the locals, they may end up losing this land. So they came up with the word conservation. Now, instead of keeping the domestic animals, they keep the wild animals. And they keep the wild animals in the name that, you know, locals are poachers. So they are killing quite these endangered species, so they have to conserve them. So the former poachers rebranded themselves to be conservancists with very selfish and ulterior motives to hold legitimately what they did not acquire legitimately. So it's a term to legitimize this hold of land that they did not acquire genuinely. And I do say with a lot of backing, even with what has been going on, because you have to wonder, when you have military training within a conservancy, then what are you conserving? So in other words, it means you have registered your land as a conservancy, but you'd partake other activities that are completely contradictory and that are, conflicting with the terms and intent and mannerism of conservation. And so in the process of that training, they lit a fire. The fire destroys and consumes partly about a quarter of that land, over 12,000 acres. When I say 12,000 acres, I mean 3 times Nairobi CBD. Yeah. So I began a litigation, same case as similar to the Ole Girisho case, because I did file a case against the British government. And they did come in court arguing again on the technicality that they argued way back in 1913 when Pastor Ole Girisho was taking them to court. And they said, we are sovereign, and a sovereign state cannot be subjected to the court of another state. And we told the judge, while they say they are sovereign, they have signed a defense cooperation agreement. And through this agreement, they've waived their right to immunity. They have said that while in Kenya, they shall abide by the Kenyan laws and be subjected to the Kenyan constitution and the articles of this defense cooperation agreement. And the judge agreed with us. And it's a landmark decision in terms of both this aspect of interpretation of the defense cooperation agreement and at large environmental litigation. And in that case, we have over 7,700 members who are adjacent to this community. You remember the soldiers were actually posting on Snapchat, taking credit of having caused a fire and even killing elephants within the fire. And they were saying, hey ho, when in Rome. And they put some marks, meaning while in Rome, act like the Romans. So they are saying while in Kenya, you can act like the Kenyans. In other words, they mean like while in Kenya, you can kill an elephant and get away with it because anyway, the locals are poachers. So this is what they do. So it's not a big deal to come in Kenya and kill an elephant. So
let me ask her. Sorry for taking you back. So what's the correlation? Walk me through the relationship between the British Army training inside a conservancy. From what I'm getting and from what you've said, a conservancy, they enjoy the benefits of keeping the animals safe and sound, right? Isn't it contradicting to see that you want to say this is a conservancy where the animals are safe and sound, but you are still training in that same conservancy? And what training is this? What are some of the weapons, or what are some of the things that the British Army use when it comes to training in these conservancies?
You're very right, Lynn, because when the British forces come, they come like 6,000 soldiers a year. So you can imagine 6,000 within a sensitive ecosystem. And when we speak of Loldaiga, it's actually a water catchment, because with some rivers flowing from Loldaiga Hills all the way to the Great Iwasonyiro, which drains to the Lorien Swamp. And we have so many actually heritage sites within Loldaiga Hills. We have so many rock paintings for the earliest inhabitant of Laikipia, which are the Dorobo. You'll find so much art. In fact, it's a heritage site for the National Museum of Kenya. So when we have 6,000 soldiers with machine guns and tank missiles and weapons, they have low-flying helicopters, maneuvering. So it's an intensive and extensive training activity being conducted in a sensitive ecosystem, and we've even wild animals there. And most of us, Kenyans know, animals are quite sensitive to their environment. I mean, you cannot be blasting explosives here and think that an elephant will just remain calm. What this elephant will run away for safety. I mean, the instinct of these animals are to run anytime there is a slight movement. You've seen, even watching these and at Geo, you'll find that even a gazelle, at the slightest move of anything, it runs away. So it is not in the best interest of these wild animals for the training to be within the conservancy, but it is within the best interest of the owners of this conservancy for the training to be here. So I think, from where I stand, it's more of an economic decision rather than from a best interest point of view. It is not in the best interest of the immediate communities who will fall victims of these animals running away for safety. And we don't blame the wild animals. It is their instinct to run away when their environment, and the peace and serenity which they enjoy is perturbed. So those benefiting from these activity, like Robert Wells, who owned Loldaiga, conservancy where this training was taking place. For the past span of the Defense Cooperation Agreement, which goes in phases of 5 years, he earned over 1.2 billion shillings. So the British military do not understand why they enter into an agreement with a private citizen. When the British government come, they should only get into contract with our government. They cannot even get into contract with the county government because they are the government of the United States. So government and government can enter into agreement. Government and government can trade, can partner. But government do not, especially foreign government, do not enter into contracts and agreement with private entities. But you find here, they get into agreements that even the communities and even our government does not know about, because they have these leases that they get to lease these private conservancies for training. And I do not know why our parliament allows, such kind of an arrangement, because it is actually the government that should be leading, or in extension, and to make this training to help. And let me move back a little.
Yes.
During early 2000, the British Army were training within the ranges in Dol Dol. Dol Dol is from where we were. It's about 40 kilometers in the far north. It's from there now the Kenyan landscape stretches all the way to the desert part of Kenya and the arid and semi-arid areas in far Samburu. So they used to train within Dol Dol and Samburu. And during that time, the Maasai, they were quite negligent. They used to leave explosives. And so with young boys grazing cattle, and you step on a grenade that has been left recklessly by the visiting forces in terms of training. And the grenade explodes and you are amputated, And a lawsuit was brought against the soldiers. It was then fronted by the firm of an English firm in London called Lide. And it led to a compensation of about 7.7 million euros for about 220 Maasais who had been maimed and amputated by these explosives that were left negligently. So to run away from liability. And actually the main reason why they compensated the Maasai on that case is because they were training on open fields. I've tried going through the records. I've not seen any single payment that was done to the Maasais for the use of their land by the time these forces were training in Dol Dol and Samburu. They were only compensated because of the maimings and killings that, these explosives had. I've helped kids in cases where at around 2016, a kid just found a fuse that was lying on the ground. He took up the fuse and the fuse really maimed him. He lost his 2 arms, he lost 2 eyes, he lost his eyesight because of the his hearing because of the blast. I tried taking him to a school for the deaf and they could not accept him because he can't see. I take him to a school for the blind, but they can't accept him because he can't hear. And he has no fingers for the braille. So it's someone who's been rendered wholly, his whole life has been turned upside down. You can imagine someone without arms, without proper hearing, and without eyesight, because of these fuses. So they compensated the Maasais then and the Samburus on the grounds that they are training within their lands, and they've not been enclosing them. And for the Maasais, as I pointed out, grass is their livelihood. The Maasais, when there is rain and there is grass, then they are a happy community and a happy people. So you could not stop them from going to graze where the military are training because the cows, there's grass there, and they did not, the kind of the risks that they were taking, and the benefit, they are outweighing the dangers. And I mean it's their land, and they're not being paid for even it. So they could not stop feeding their cows on this grass. And now this grass is even raised with a lot of military residue and military waste. In a single training, the kind of military waste that emanate from that training can fill 6 containers. So you can imagine this military residue left within these rangelands for the community, and their cows are grazing there. So to abscond or to avoid liabilities on such account in future, the British Army resulted now to training within conservancies. But this is now where it gets more interesting. That now they even pay training fees for the lease they lease on these conservancies. And they train in around 10 conservancies now, from which I have obtained documentation from. They train in Chololo, train in Pala, they train in Olenaisho, they train in Loldaiga. I used to train in the Cookie Galman estate of TNC, the Nature Conservancy. They also trained at some point in Oljogi and Olpajeta. Actually, one point in Olpajeta, they shot a rhino on grounds that the rhino was a danger, in self-defense. They shot a rhino while training at Olpajeta. And you have to ask yourself, who has the right to claim self-defense? Is it the rhino or these soldiers who went to disturb the rhino in its haven, in the conservancy? So it's actually, the rhino should have claimed self-defense, defending itself from these people wielding machine guns and missiles and anti-tank missiles and explosives. But they shot it on grounds that, it was a danger to themselves. So that's what happened then, and that is what has been happening, with money being channeled to these owners of these conservancies.
So the money is given to the owners of the conservancies? The
money is channeled to the account, and actually some of them have account in Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein is a non-tax haven, so it's not even money flowing to the Kenyan ecosystem. And so many times I've heard people say that when the British Army come to Laikipia, they bring a lot of economic livelihoods. I do not dispute that they give employment, and we really appreciate those employment. But what I want to say is there is much more we can earn from this. We cannot have money flowing to Liechtenstein while we are hosting them, and we'll keep on hosting them. And so many times I've said, I'm not chasing them away from Kenya. It's not up to me. I'm not a member of parliament. I do not have the authority and mandate of the Kenyan people. But all I have is that this training is not sustainable. And to make it more sustainable and to make it benefit more people, then this is what should be done. We should not be getting into contract with the private citizens here. We're taking money to Liechtenstein. Train on community lads. Pay the community for their land.
And it's this money is in millions.
The county of Laikipia would actually not need much from the national government in terms of the money that flows to counties from the national government, if we really capitalized on even this training to ensure that it really benefits the local people here, as it should be, and as I see in other countries. I've looked at the Defense Cooperation Agreement between Canada and UK, because UK also has a number of bases in other countries like Canada, Cyprus, Germany. And what you see happening in Cyprus is very different, and what happens in Canada is very different from what happens here in Kenya. I watched when NEMA was submitting their report to the Parliamentary Committee of Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Affairs. And they actually said that even after the Loldaiga fire incidents, they were not allowed to access the conservancy and conduct an environmental social impact assessment.
Why?
Well, they were not allowed. And I've seen in Canada, Canadian authorities, the Defense Cooperation Agreement of Canada, I think on Article 16, provides that the visiting forces here, United Kingdom, has to provide and disclose the nature of ammunition they even get to train with. In Kenya, NEMA has no idea the kind of weapons the British Army come to train with. And they're coming to train with these weapons in a conservancy, where it's supposed to be a safe haven. I do not know how KWS allows that. If you made a mistake of going to Mount Kenya National Park with a penknife, Lynn, a penknife, you will be nearly killed because you'll be named a poacher. I mean, what are you doing with a penknife in a national park? You'll be told you want to skin hares. But someone here comes with a machine gun and enters a safe haven for animals, and no one even raises an eyebrow. I mean, it's been normalized. If you happen to cut down a tree that you plant in your own homestead today without a chief's letter, it's your tree, you planted and watered it. But to cut it down, you have to take a letter from the chief explaining why you want to cut that tree, which is yours. But someone here burns thousands and thousands of trees, and it's normalized. No one asks or raises eyebrows. Even NEMA is not allowed to get there and do a social impact assessment. And in Laikipia, in Nanyuki, we even host a number of our other militaries. Nanyuki is a defense headquarters because we've other barracks. We host our Kenyan Air Force. It's actually their headquarters. We host the Kenyan Army, actually 2 battalions of the Kenyan Army. So I do not see our Kenyan Army and our Kenyan Air Force misbehave as I've seen. I've seen them come here and they mislead our local women here. When you come dashing a UK passport,
the British Army.
When you come with a Kenyan passport and wave it at any lady and tell her, I actually love you and I'll actually take you to UK. I want to marry you. When you have a British passport, I mean, it's a passcode for almost everything. I mean, literally, someone will fall in love with you because now you've thrown to them the idea that they can even go to UK and have greener pastures. So there's a power imbalance. But for our local armies here, I've not seen them impregnate local women here and leave them with children. In any case, they know that once they do that, feeder will be on their neck. They know that these women will report to the children office the very next day. And we've Kenyan lawyers here who are very good in those family law cases, and they'll actually get to your payslip. Some of us may remember there was one time a Kenyan soldier at the Air Force killed his wife and 2 children. Quite an unfortunate incident. But the different thing, what makes that quite different from what we see now is after killing the child. Actually, the reason why he killed them was because he was paying a lot of child support for these kids. And I think he was there is no defense for murder. There can be no justification for murder, and he kills the 2 kids, and the mother. And the good thing is the Kenyan law gets hold of him. He's arrested and he's reprimanded and he goes through the criminal justice system. But I've seen them here in 2012. They kill a young woman and they dump her in a sewer.
The British Army.
The British Army. An inquest is done that actually shows that she was killed by 1 or 2 British forces, dumped in a sewer to cover up. 13 years later, this family is still crying for justice. So this is the difference I see with the Kenyan Army, with the Kenyan Defense Forces and the British Army. Because for the Kenyan Defense Forces, you commit a crime, you're handed over to the Kenyan authorities, and you're subjected to the criminal justice system as it should be. But now for our visiting forces here, if they slapped you on the road, where would you go? You go to our local police station here. It's actually built by them. It's sponsored by Batuk, our police station here. So you'll be recording a statement in a police station that is sponsored.
Our police station was built by Batuk?
Yeah, our police station here at Nanyuki, there are offices that are funded by Batuk. I do not understand why, of all things that they could fund, including hospitals, they chose to fund a police station where reports are supposed to be made, including of their offenses. It's clearly a clear conflict of interest.
Wow, that's crazy.
And that explains why the case of someone like Wanjiru has been hanging, because, and that explains the difference we have in other countries where they have training facilities, like in Canada, in Cyprus. In Cyprus, they have what they call an area claims office. So the function of an area claims office is Cypriot farmers come complaining that, low-flying helicopters have caused their goat to abort. And they go and file claims at the area claims office. And once they file these claims, they are compensated by the area claims office as the occurrences occur. Now, within these communities in Laikipia where the British train, of all things, low-flying helicopters, of course, actually, when you are at Lolaiga, community when this training is taking place, you may for a moment think you're in Gaza, because you will feel what it means to be in a battle zone. You will feel all kind of military maneuvers and military simulations to make it as real as it could be. So even though you took shot there and told people you're in Gaza, they will actually believe you, because it's not any different from what happens to Gaza. To the extent that even homes crack. I've seen houses crack because of this blast that are being made. So I wanted to bring this aspect of area claims office and juxtapose that with what we see, like in Loldaiga. So in Loldaiga, we've, of course, these low-flying helicopters and all these. In Cyprus, farmers are being compensated because they are saying, my goat has aborted because a helicopter was flying so low that it scared my sheep and it aborted. But in Kenya here, with them doing all these maneuvers and all this blasting, and animals are scared and they run away from the conservancy and even attack, sometimes killing communities. Over 6 months ago, I mean, the cases are so many that I cannot even count them from among my clients. I've some who've been mauled by lions, others by hyenas. I've some who've been attacked by buffaloes. I've some killed by elephants. And so when you are harmed as a result of the activities of the British Army here, and as a result of their nexus and these conflicting uses of the ecosystem, the British Army, if elephants came and destroyed your crops, or if a lion mauled you, you are told that you should now go and seek compensation from KWS. So you go to KWS, you will actually, if maybe the valuation of your cabbages or potatoes that you had is about 100,000, I can assure you you'll waste about half of that money trying to seek compensation from KWS, and it is not guaranteed. You'll fill those claim forms and they'll lie somewhere for like 10 years, and you are told, you know, the government is broke, doesn't have money to pay compensations now.
Or the government will go broke if it was... Actually, let's listen. Let's let our viewers listen to one of the community members who gave us the whole process of trying to get compensation once something happens as a result of these disturbances.
Katika hii community tumekuwa na watu wenye wameweza kuumizwa na wanyama, na hata kama kunao wenye wameumizwa na pia mimea kuharibiwa, shamba kuharibika, kumekuwa na compensation.
Vile kuna kuanga hapa, tuseme nianze upande wa mtu kuumia na wengine kuuliwa na wanyama. Iko mama moja hapa ameumwa hii mikono yote na fisi, na ameumwa hapa tu kwa mtu akienda kuchota maji, na kaumwa mpaka huku wapi. Ile kasi mkubwa sana umesikia. Unaambia kimbia huko kwa KWS, chukua form, jasa, upeleke kwa mtu anaitwa Valia, aangalie ni nini umefanywa nini. Kama ni daktari, upelekee daktari yule amekutibu. Alikutibu hivi, unastahili ulipwe pesa ngapi. Hiyo yote ukisa jasa hiyo form, unaambiwa urudishe kwa watu ya KWS. Haya, tuseme upande wa mimea kama mimi. Nikaharibiwa mimea yangu, machungwa, nini, kila kitu. Wakati niliwapigia simu wakakuja, wanakuja na mapicha vile mmekuja, wanapiga picha ile kitu yote imeharibiwa. Wanakuambia kuja ofisi na ukuje na kitambulisho yako na namba yako ya simu. Unaenda huko, wanajasa, wanakuambia tunajasa kwa OB, wanajasa kwa OB. Alafu unaambiwa hiyo form peleka kwa chief. Let's say kama sisi watu ya hapa kwetu Muramati, chief ako huko tunaita Juakali, karibu Juakali. Sasa nyinyi mmejionea ofisi ya chief hapo. Watu wale hawana nguvu kama mimi ama huyu, ni kukodisha ngari uende mpaka huko. Saa zingine ukute hayuko, amekuwa na shughuli, ameitwa na mkubwa wake, kasi ni urudi mpaka utafute siku ingine. Ukishajasiwa na chief, unarudisha mpaka kwa hiyo watu ya KWS wako huko Umande, naye ni kukodisha ngari ingine. Ukifika huko, iko mahali ambaye wataandika wakuambie hii uende ukatafute agricultural officer, umpelekee hii form ndio akunje kwako aone kama ni ukweli, adhibitishe. Saa ingine akwambia hata hana fare ya kukuja, utafanyaje? Mimi nakuambia yule mtu ambaye ameumizwa na hii wanyama, hata kama uko na mbuzi umeuza 5,000 ama 6,000, yote itaisha na uende uuse ingine ndio uone kama hii maneno utamaliza. Mwishoe utaambiwa uende na Nyuki, na kutoka na Nyuki town ni mahali unakodisha pikipiki more than 300 shillings ndio upeleke hizo form. Ukienda huko unakuta yule mtu anachukua fomu hayuko karibu, ni ungoje. Si ile pikipiki imerudi, tena utachukua ingine. Sisi watu ni wengi sana, moto imepoa barabara. Wanashindwa na hizo fomu, mimi nitasifanya nini? Isipokuwa mtu ambaye ako na kanguvu kidogo anastahili. Haya, kama ni fence ile mzuri ile anakuambia tunataka kitu kinaitwa chain link, hiyo ndio utakubali. Ndio uone ile mtu ya value, uende mahali yako. Hai, unaumia. Unaenda hivi, unapeleka hivi. Ukienda kwa hiyo mtu wa value, ati ameenda kasi nje, unakuta ni safea, ni quantity safea. Na anakaanga huko na Nyuki, hapa karibu na Nyuki River, hapo iko maofisi ya serikali. Ndio mtafute mpate. Kama huna pesa hakuna kitu. Haya, malisiwa hizo zote. Sasa fomu yako isemekane ni mzuri, upeleke kwa KWS. Hiyo inakuwa dumped. Tukienda claim na hii wase, tunauliza bwana county commissioner, sisi tutafanya nini? Anatuambia hata hii nyumba ukiangalia fomu zinajaa kutoka chini mpaka juu. Serikali ilijifunga. Sasa tufanye nini? Sababu sijui ikilipa hizi mafomu zote itafilisika. Kwa nini unatuambia tujaze hizi mafomu basi? Sisi tuko na shida sana. Kama mimi niko na fomu zangu na sinjalipwa tangu niliharibiwa kila kitu.
Umekaa miaka ngapi hivyo?
Ai, sasa tuseme kama miaka 4. Sasa sisi tunashindwa, tunaishi wapi hapa kwetu Muramati? Ukisikia tunamuita ni mkuja mtuangalilie ile shinda tuko naye, na shinda ni na inafaidi ile watu, na hakuna kitu wanatugawia kama wale wa Masai wanakaa huko Masai Mara. Kwa hivyo kama watu hiyo Masai Mara wamepata 10,000, wanawapatia kama 3,000. Hata sisi tunastahili hivyo hapa Rorodaiga, wao wakitupatia kitu ya aina hiyo.
All right, so I believe you've just watched that, and you remember yesterday when I heard him narrate this whole process. It's crazy that some of them have actually lost what you are talking about, their hands, their crops, everything, and they still don't have any hope of compensation.
Lynn, this is the greatest injustice that I really don't understand, and it's been entrenched in our legal system and justified to become norm. You know, as you say, this is a session to learn and relearn. And so we have to ask ourselves, I mean, ideally, what happens in normal circumstances in the village when my cow eats my neighbor's farm? I do not need, instinct or common sense is that I should compensate him for the loss that my cows has led to his farm. But here you come, and I understand wholly why KWS is broke. Because KWS here is paying for someone else's losses. I mean, when these elephants bring profit, this profit flow to the owners of these conservancies. So if tourists came to see elephant at, Loldaiga, and they've booked hotels there, these tourists, the money will flow to Loldaiga. But when these elephants go and bring losses, they attack someone else's crops, you're told to go for compensation from KWS, and that has been the norm. So you wonder why KWS, and when we speak of KWS, we should speak it knowing that KWS is you and I. We are the taxpayers So we are compensating people because of their crops that someone else earns profit from them. You know, in the concept of a cow, it's you who drinks milk from this cow. So when this cow feeds on someone else's cabbages, then you who've been benefiting from this cow should compensate your neighbor. That's what common sense dictates. But we have someone here who's been benefiting from this elephant, now channeling losses to another entity, a KWS, in the name that this elephant are the property of KWS. But KWS, it's like you have a private school, and this private school, the government employs TSC teachers, public teachers, to teach in your private school. So that the parents pay fees to your account, but the government pays for the teachers teaching in your school. Because we've soldiers employed by KWS, who you and I as Kenyan taxpayers pay. But with these soldiers guarding these conservancies, in the name that this elephant are KWS. So I don't understand the matrix and the calculation and the math. How does KWS ascertain how much these conservancies should pay to KWS? Or when these conservancies, who sometimes they refuse to build these fences, Lynn, like they are adamant to build the fences. Sometimes they say it's KWS that should build the fences. I've seen reports from Steering Committee on Human Rights where they're saying KWS should build fences on private conservancies. And now they are reluctant. They don't want to go or ascertain losses of building a fence. They say that's the work of KWS to build fences and protect their wild animals.
Let me ask, I asked the natives and I asked them, how do these conservancies help you guys? And most of them could not point to any single benefit, because maybe our audience think we are just talking about conservancies in terms of these are just trees and animals, but we have so many luxurious points inside these conservancies. We have lounges, we have restaurants. Actually, I was shocked to even see someone like Bill Gates dines in some of these conservancies. So could you point to us, how do this, what is inside a conservancy, and why exactly do the natives or the people out the community, why would they not benefit then?
Correct. Some of them have no idea that Bill Gates was even at Oljogi to begin with. So if Bill Gates came and left millions of pounds there, they wouldn't even know. So for $1 to flow from the conservancy that has been left by these visitors coming in, or even ask yourself, Loldag has been earning over 1.2 billion shillings as a result of the British training in this conservancy. But the community here even has no idea that that kind of money has been, they've been paid that kind of money. They only think that they are their friends, they're just giving them land to train. In the eyes of the community, they had no idea until recently when I did a Freedom of Information request to the Ministry of Defense UK with my contact there and got all that information. It is not even our government, our county government here was not in possession of this information. Do you know how much some of these launches pay to our county government? They pay 50,000 shillings.
Per what?
50,000 for the license, for them to, a license for these hotels, some of these hotels. And do you know how much you'll spend in some of these hotels? It's ridiculous amount of money. Like in Oljogi, you would have to sell your ancestral land to stay there for 3 days. And it depends whether you are a known name. Like you may have that money, but it's not necessarily that they'll admit you. They have guest lists that can run even all the way to 2026. So they can put you on the waiting list depending on the weight of your name. Sometimes you had to be allowed someone to get even some interest there. So, and when you look even at the owners, some of the owners of these conservancies, like Olpejeta was owned by some mafia families, people of quite, people who, if you start digging on their background, you'll start to wonder, when you look at Oljogi, it was owned by the Wellensteins. If you go in France and ask who the Wellensteins are and the tax evasion charges that they have, you will start to wonder now if they are evading taxes in France, which has more very developed, tax systems. What has been happening to Oljogi? So I think we need to, as a people, and our government and our leaders, especially parliamentarians, and this is now what I think will be the solution. We have to look at the laws that have brought us here. We should reconsider why KWS should be compensating for the losses that are accruing when animals, come out from private conservancies. We should be asking ourselves why these private conservancies on occupiers' liability should not take liability when the animals, get from their conservancies and cause harm to the immediate communities, because KWS should not be taking responsibility. I only understand if an elephant comes from Mount Kenya National Park, that kind of a claim should be wholly within the jurisdiction of KWS, because these animals come from a national park, which is the exclusive jurisdiction of KWS. When you want to access Mount Kenya National Park, which is some 20 kilometers from here, Lynn, at Sirimon Gate, you'll pay for the gate fees, for you to access that gate. But go today and access like Laikipia, what will you pay? When you pay, where is this money going? Do you have a KWS payment desk at Laikipia where you pay to KWS so that you can access? We don't. How much money has Laikipia be paying to KWS because of these animals that they have been accruing from them? So we have to check. We have to really ask ourselves who really benefits from this tourism, who really benefits from this conservation. And bearing in mind, now there is so much activities being done in these lands. I've told you there's military training, there's even carbon credit schemes. We now have even them, like the immediate communities there. They pay for them to graze within these conservancies, for them to access the grass within these conservancies. And they really appreciate that they are even given an opportunity to pay. If you even start saying that you don't want to pay, and your cows are dying, so you have no choice, you have to pay. And you've actually, to be grateful, you've been given a chance to pay for your cows to graze there, because, if there is nowhere else you may access this grass, so you are out of choice. You have to pay, disregarding all these historical land injustices which you and I know are true. And when you look at our constitution, Lynn, I really think we have a very beautiful constitution. And I will echo the words of other scholars who've said this before and say that we have a very progressive constitution, actually one of the very best, because on Article 66, sub-Article 2 of our constitution, it understands that we may never be able to recover this land back, and we don't need this land back. As we began by pointing out, communities in Kenya never cared about owning land, or they never owned land. What they did is owning what comes from that land. So Article 66 2, in a way, understands the historical underpinnings of the Kenya land tenure systems, and says that all investment in property, in this case land, because the entire Article 66 is on matters land. So it says that all investment in property must benefit the local communities. And this is why I love it most. It says must benefit local communities and their economies. So it's not a matter of you coming and building some gutters in a school and bringing a water tank and saying, we are assisting the community, because that is what I've seen the British Army mostly do. It is not about the social impact, because those are social. The Constitution goes past the veil of social responsibilities here in CSR. It goes now to the actual benefits to the economies. So you as the investor here will have to answer two questions. One, how is my investment here benefiting the local community and their economies? So what is the economies of this local community here? So if you're within a community of goat keepers and herders like the Maasai communities we visited, you must ask yourself, how is this military training? How is this tourism? How is this carbon credit schemes benefiting this local community? And once you answer that, and you are even neighboring other communities, the agrarian communities where we were at Monday, and ask yourself, how is my tourism? How is the military training? How are these carbon credit schemes benefiting the economies of these people? You'll never find British Army stand at Muramati and start buying cabbages from the villagers there, you'll not find them start saying, please bring us some onions and sukuma wiki. No. So your actions are actually harming the economies of these communities, which the Constitution provides you should benefit. So instead of benefiting them, you are harming them.
You're harming them.
And I'm very happy with the recent judgment that has come from Isiolo Law Court, and where a three-judge bench has ruled that, especially this idea of creating private conservancies or conservancies within community land is illegal. And I wholly agree with that, because instead of benefiting the local communities,
they're benefiting themselves.
They're benefiting themselves and actually harming the economies of the local communities. Yeah.
Can I ask you, forgive me if this sounds wrong, but from my observation, some of the communities near conservancies are living very depleted lives. I mean, yesterday it broke my heart to see some of the houses that these communities live in. You would expect that if we are bordering a conservancy, then we'll have a lot of developments on this other end, right? Why is that so? And maybe my next question is, the roads here are pathetic. Honestly, I feel like the roads are designed to favor off-road trucks and not my legs as an individual,
Correct.
Not me as a native. Why is that by design?
It's by design, because having good roads will deplete the whole idea of game drive. So when they say game drive, they mean game, they mean wild. So when you have very smooth roads leading to them, then you are killing the idea of the real idea of game drive as they want it to appear. And those communities living adjacent to these conservancies, you find that the practice of farmers, and I'm happy I've come from my parents are farmers. What happens is the crop or the harvest from one season provides capital and seeds for the next crop. So if I had maize here and I sell my maize, that maize should provide me with farm implement. I should be able to save some of the money and buy seeds for planting in the next season. So when animals come and destroy everything you had for this season, it means they've not just destroyed this season, but they've destroyed your ability to, farm in subsequent seasons. So they've not just killed your present, they've killed your future as well. So you are in a position where you've lost everything that you had, and you've lost any ability to be able to reproduce that. And this happens over and over again, years, times and over again. And some of the community members, actually yesterday, you had them say that they wonder whether they plant for the animals. I mean, is it that they farm to feed the animals? Because you plant, the animals feed on them, and one compensate you for that. Your farm will be on KWS list for 10 years. So that explains why this community has been impoverished. And for those 10 years, if we ever got the records of the kind of money those conservancies have made from tourism, from these military trainings. I've just told you, in one investment of military training alone, a conservancy like Oldega has made 1.2 billion. So while Oldega has made 1.2 billion in terms of military training, cumulatively, the community there, the past those 3 years, they've borne those losses of 1.2 billion. If you count the individual losses these communities have accumulated over that period of time, when our big man here has earned 1.2 billion shillings, now for them, those losses, they've lost 1.2 billion. And now KWS is supposed to compensate for those 1.2 billion that they actually never touched their account.
Let's go back to the Loldwiga, the conservancy, the fire. One of the things that also broke my heart yesterday was hearing the community members, the way you've said, they pay to access those conservancies. And actually just cows were allowed, no sheep, no goats. And one community member had almost 100 cows in that conservancy. So here is a conservancy. I'm paying you to access that conservancy. And he's paying, how much was it? 150 shillings per month for one cow. And we did the maths and it was crazy. So why is it that when the fire broke and the animals were burnt in that conservancy. Because assuming the conservancy is yours, you've charged me, which means you are taking responsibility for having my animals inside, right? So why is it that the British government only compensated the owner of the conservancy and they never compensated the natives who lost all those animals inside there?
We actually had to go to court for them even to reconsider the claims for these communities. And we actually sued Lord Liger because it is them who allow the British to train with. So actually Lord Liger is the first respondent in our case, and thereafter the British Army. So we have the second respondent compensating the first respondent and leaving actually the claimant or petitioners who actually even took the case to court. So you wonder what framework that was used to adequately and promptly compensate Lord Liger. And they compensated them for solar panels that were consumed in the fire. They compensated them for a vehicle that was burnt in the fire, for personal items burnt in the fire. And this is where even it gets more interesting. They compensated them for pasture that was lost. The grass. They said, that, Lord Liger also has some cows. So they said because the cows have lost grass that they would ordinarily feed on, then they've compensated them for that grass. But they did not have any iota. They had the records with them. They knew, when these farmers have an agreement, they have the records of which farmers brought their animals in this conservancy. They had the record of how many number of animals were in that conservancy at that time of the incident. But they do not itemize those items as they did with the conservancy here, who was the first respondent to know there is this farmer who had 100 cows and he's not been able to recover any one of them because that fire cost so much. Some cows were consumed in the fire, others ran away from the smoke, and now when an animal is in fear and it escapes and runs, then it's a conservancy also frequented with a lot of predators. So chances of recovering those animals are next to nil. Others came of that conservancy with a lot of breathing issues. They developed a lot of health-related issues because of the poisonous emissions that are coming from there. So you had the record of the number of farmers and the cows that were in this conservancy. You refuse to itemize them and compensate them, but you end up compensating another. And the only explanation here now that we have is because there's a ratio issue, because the owner here is a white and the owners here are black natives. So you can compensate your fellow white man here and disregard compensating this. And I think this has been the modus operation of especially the British forces here. Because again, I've told you about the case of Agnes, which has been on for this now the 13th year, and it's not been resolved. But you can see the case of Ulpajeta, the case of Lord Liger. They compensated them even without us knowing, so that their cows do not die of famine because the grass has been burnt down. But you leave the community here now. This is the 4th year. That fire was from the 20th of March. So in 2 months' time, we'll be on the 4th anniversary. And they are yet to compensate not even a single shilling. Disregarding even the provisions of the Defense Cooperation Agreement on Article 11, Sub-Article 3, which provides the visiting forces where their actions are in conflict with the local community, they shall adequately compensate them, and promptly, for that matter. And these are not my words. These are the words of the Defense Cooperation Agreement, that they shall adequately and promptly compensate. Yeah.
Wow. Let's talk about the school children, because also one of the remarks that really made me like, what are we talking about, is knowing the struggles of school-going children in this particular region, and knowing that they barely sleep sometimes at night because of the noise. Can we put that here, where one person, one community member was actually talking about how bad it is when those trainings are happening?
Amesema wakati hizo training ziko zinawasumbua sana. Watoto shuleni inawadhuru aje?
Wale watoto wako shule wanaudhika zaidi kuliko sisi, kwa maana huyu mtoto jambo la kwanza hajazoea kusikia milipuko. Unaona? na kama hajazoea kusikia milipuko, amestuka usiku. Okay, ameamuka asubuhi anaenda shule. Wanyama ndio hao kwa barabara. Huyu mtoto sasa hata akienda shule kusikia kitu ni ngumu. Usiku ni mabomu. Mchana ndovu ndio hiyo kwa barabara. Unaona? So hii mambo inasumbua sisi. Na hii fence ikiwekwa hii mambo yote inaisha. Unaona? Tukae kwa usalama. Otherwise tuko na shinda hapa kusema kweli.
Thanks we do not have ranking nowadays, but the last time we had ranking, Muramati Primary School was the worst performed school in the entire country. And Muramati Primary School is at the center of this Loldaiga community. And when you look at the living conditions of these children, one, they are coming from homes where they will go hungry because their entire crops have been eaten by wild animals. And for the entire night, these children will be drumming sufurias and beating anything they can find, tins. You may wonder whether it's a festival for some time when you're there. You may think maybe these communities celebrate or kind of maybe some cultural event. But people are trying to scare away elephants from the farm. And these elephants have become accustomed to this beating of sufurias, that they no longer fear beating of sufurias. So you'll be drumming your sufuria, your drums, and they've become so much used to it that they know they're not scared of it. So the entire village, the children are awake the entire night. So there is no time to even do their homework. And if the wild animals are not keeping them awake, British Army is keeping them awake, blasting bombs in the Conservancy, in near Gaza, near military, or near a war zone. So these kids are now supposed to go to school in the morning. And on your way to school, you meet a buffalo. There are sometimes actually school-going children, they met lions on their way, and all these animals now, especially after the fire incident, there was no water in the Conservancy because it's been leaked by the fire. So the animals had to look for alternative sources of water, and the only place they would find that is within now the community lots. They will come in the morning, you're going to fetch water maybe at your earthen dam, and you find a lion there, you find an elephant there. And animals, when it comes to survival, there's nothing that scares them. If it's about their water, it's about their pasture. No matter how, it's not near survival. The instinct now have turned survival. So it's either they get this water or they get this water. So they have now to come to Nanyuki, call KWS now to come and start trying to shoot and turn them back to the Conservancy, only to go back there momentarily, and again they're back. When dust kicks in, they have to go back. So that explains why these kids, have been quite affected. And this goes as far as 2002, 2003. You'll find report of the steering committee provide that actually the human-wildlife conflict within Taiga system is a human right issue. And when we speak of human right issue, human rights have a higher ranking. Of all rights, human rights are non-negotiable. And they're inherent. So every human being has a right, Yeah.
Wow. What's our obsession with comparing animals to human beings? Because tell me why, if an elephant comes and eats your whole crops, you have to take like 4 years, like that gentleman. He said it took him 4 years. It's actually 4 years later, no one has compensated him for the damage. But the other gentleman also said, and I hope we have that, let's play that.
Wakati imekula shamba yangu, haina mwenyewe. Nikiua, ndege inatoka Nairobi kuja kujua mwenye ameua nini. Sasa, unaniambia ni yangu kwa njia gani?
So ukaua mnyama saa hii?
Ndege, askari, sijui itakuwaje. Usikie tu ndovu moja imeanguka hapa chini. Kuja ujionee sasa sinema mzuri. Ndege, askari ambaye unajua saa ingine tunaitana tunaambiwa hakuna askari. Askari wengine sijui wameenda kazi Romuruti, sijui wengine wapi. Lakini mnyama akianguka wanakuja na lori. Ndege juu, lori chini. wakitafuta imeua na nini.
He said that you can, like, it's disturbing that you cannot kill an elephant. The whole police force will come and surround. What's our obsession with this?
Yeah, actually, you may murder someone and, it's not like killing an elephant, because you'll find choppers there, as they said. They land there. When these elephants are eating your crops, there is no urgency in coming to chase them back to the conservancy. But make a mistake of pelting them with stones or even killing them, then hell breaks loose. And I've seen communities being tortured. I've seen people being killed on allegations, even on allegations that they killed. Not that there is evidence that they killed, on allegations that they killed. And they are tortured. Some disappear, never to be seen back. And I think primarily that has been the narrative that has been peddled in the name of conservation, that the natives are poachers, and not to make amusement, but actually the only horn that Africans or Kenyan communities or natives had use of were bull's horns, because they could use them to take busa, they could use them to take moratina, they could use them to take their local brews. That's the only horn that we had use of. And the other horn that we used was an antelope's horn for communication purposes. People used to blow antelope's horns to send messages. Those are the only horns that local communities in Kenya had use of, and they could kill bulls for those horns, and they could kill antelopes for those horns. But for an elephant horn, they had zero use of an elephant horn. How would you take moratina with a tusk, Lina? Can you take, can you feel a tusk with moratina? Because those are the only horns that we had use of. So this idea that the local and natives and these communities are poachers, and it's like now you're protecting, when you say you're conserving and now you're protecting these
animals from the natives.
Correct. So that now the ideology that you're protecting these animals from the natives, and these are natives who have zero use of some of these game, and they know if you want to protect animals, protect them from the point of who benefits from these horns, protect them from the point of market. There is no local use of these horns, so that means the only market is international. So cut it from the market, and the animals will be safe. Yeah, because
how did we interact long time ago? So I thought our ancestors were okay with these things.
Correct, and that's why now they are here. If our forefathers did not conserve and protect these animals, we wouldn't be seeing them today. The same way we don't even see hares in Europe. They poached all of them, and even the bats. But now they came here in Africa and pretended to be the real conservancies. And the local natives who've lived with these animals for thousands of years and have protected them to the point now that these visitors can now come and find them.
Poachers.
We've now turned poachers. And now the poachers have rebranded themselves, of course, through aggressive media. And now they've turned to be the conservancies. And the conservancies have now been rebranded, to be poachers. Sometimes one day have a walk at Treetops Hotel. Treetops is quite famed for being the hotel where the Queen, the first, Queen Elizabeth, became a queen while she climbed on a tree, as a princess, and came down as a queen. So at Treetops, you will find the history of poaching. You find G. Lord who shot a 7-ton elephant with a single shot on the tusk. And those are the art they have on the gallery. Because Treetops, the idea of building Treetops was for it to be a poaching spot, such that it gives you elevation. So you're at a point, and then it was built next to a water hole. So you've Treetops here, elevated, and we've now animals coming to lick salt and take water. So as these animals take water from this spot where you can see them, then poachers are there with their rifles pointing to the animals taking water, and they shoot them, and they take pictures and take pride in what they've done. They've actually managed with a single shot to kill an elephant bull, an African bull elephant. And you can see even while the queen was there, you can wonder what she was doing on top of the tree, if not to enjoy these practice of poaching and moving these animals from that spot. So the real poachers have rebranded, they've become conservancies.
The irony.
Yeah. It's what Chimananda calls dangers of a single story. Because for a long time we've been told this single story that, white people love animals. And it's true, they love animals. But we love animals more. We loved animals more. And we conserved and protected animals more, including our own African setups. And when you look at a number of African traditions, by the way, you'll find even songs praising wild animals. You'll find there's one Marian song we sing of Gachoro Liga, which is a very beautiful bird. So even in our indoctrination was conservation in its manner and in its mannerism. That these are very beautiful birds, take care of them. And there are even bad omens. There are animals that if you killed, you're told you've had a bad omen. In Maasai, they have communities and clans. You're told that clan is a lion clan. That clan is an elephant clan. It means that that clan, like elephant, are their pets. You find another clan being told that's a buffalo clan. So for that family, buffaloes are like their pets. And sometimes, I don't know what's really happened, because you find that in a lion's clan, even though they walked between a pride of lions, the lions would not even mind them,
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now we are the poachers, they are
Yeah.
the conservers.
And now they have to protect these animals against us.
Because of how bad we are. We are dangerous.
We are.
I could kill a lion right now. I could kill but mentally, because I observed a couple of triggers among the natives yesterday. Mentally, what does this do to our community? You are bordering a conservancy, you have to pay to go for your animals to get access to the grass. Here you are, you have the roads. Those roads, you cannot easily use them, because then where will the tourists' vehicles pass?
The only part of it is when we're having these inquiries with the Parliamentary Committee of Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Affairs. So we had inquiries at Archers, and then we had to go to Doldol, because the next day I remember was breakfast, was the national prayer breakfast, and so they had to travel the next morning. So we had to do Archers and Doldol at the same time. So there's a road that passes between a number of those conservancies, between Borana, Lewa Downs, so that you can easily access Doldol. And our MPs were actually stopped on the road and told, no, you can't use this road. We have to first consult with the management and see whether we can allow you to pass this road. And the MPs had to wonder, if we MPs cannot even access the road to do our duty, which is oversight work, to do, they could not pass. And they actually saw it firsthand, what really happens, just for an access road. And I loved this observation from one of the people we visited yesterday, who said that tourism has been held hostage, like the money from tourism flows has been, there are pipes and channels that have been made to ensure that the earnings from tourism flow in a certain direction. So you want to take this water from tourism, but you can't, because it's been channeled by default to certain places and organizations. And so for these local communities here, without a tap, we cannot be able to benefit. And that is what Article 66.2 is saying, that kindly, if this water is flowing, create a tap for the community also, so that they can take some of this water. We don't want to know how much water is flowing, but have a tap that this community also can benefit from whatever investment that you're doing. And what these people are crying for is for a tap. You've been earning all this money. They have been earning all these losses. Just create a tap for them so that they can also benefit. And I think that would be a more sustainable way of being able to do all this.
If you had power, would the British Army be training in this country?
They will be training. I would make a very good negotiation, and I would borrow from so much best practice model in Cyprus, in Canada. I will ensure that that training, elevated this community as it should be. I will ensure that we have a win-win situation. I will ensure that this training is not just benefiting these forces in terms of making them battle hardened. The Kenyan terrain offers them with those conditions. I'll ensure that while they benefit from these conditions, the local community benefit from this training. And I'm only afraid that we've lost so much in the future, and I pray that if we have to renew this agreement, then we should ensure it's much more sustainable. I understand that the future modern warfare where we work in is one that needs a lot of collaboration between states for them, and I understand that concept, that states have to cooperate together in terms of training. But what I would not want is that this training to disregard local communities. I've seen like in Japan, on Okinawa, where the Americans have their bases. At one time, an American overran a Japanese girl, and the Japanese government was actually at the forefront of saying, no, we've hosted you here, but don't think that Japanese lives don't matter. So if you overrun a girl, for the girl you've overrun, they pay a lot of money, millions of pounds.
There are consequences.
Yeah, millions of dollars for that. But here I can't count the number of people who've been overrun by trucks here. I can't count. There are so many, completely so many. But no action is being taken against them.
The representatives of the people, the members of parliament, the governors, just hearing you say that MPs witnessed it, they know it firsthand, that there were areas they couldn't pass. What do they say? What are they doing about it?
I'm happy because since 1963, the 13th Parliament was actually the first one to come and visit these communities and get to understand firsthand what has been happening. Other communities, other Parliament have just signed and renewed this agreement without having an autochthonous understanding of what is going on. And given the preponderance of submissions that this committee received, I'm hopeful that their recommendations from this report will actually introduce new solutions and new articles and provisions in the future defense cooperation agreement, especially on these wildlife conflicts, especially on sustainable environment management, on the management of military waste and residue, on our institutions here like NEMA being able also to oversee this training, and that will enrich in this training, make it more sustainable, and a win-win solution for all of us.
Another thing is there have been, allegations that some of these conservancies are actually, they have minerals in them, and that's why they have been branded conservancies. But there are so many benefits in these particular conservancies. They've been rumors that we have gold, we have so many minerals. Would you tell us if that's true?
What would worry me more is not is about that list, because as advocates we can only speak on fact and evidence that we find. I have no evidence that there is gold or rubies there, but I'm worried if there was gold or rubies there, what would be the rationale, or what would be the policy? How would our government benefit from that? Because these conservancies now have a new concept where they're saying they want a borderless conservation, so that they remove the borders from among them, and they'll create one large country of animals, of wild animals, and of conservation. So meaning that even though we were to get like gold within these conservancies, we do not have exclusive right as a country to exploit them.
How? So
if Borana Conservancy is adjacent to Lower Downs Conservancy, and Lower Downs Conservancy is adjacent to Olenaishu, which joins Loldaiga, which connects to Oljogi, which connects to Olpejeta, which connects to TNC all the way, and they have no borders, so they have one landmass. So that means they have more lobbying. It gives them more power to manage these conservancies and everything within them. So if we want to prospect for minerals within Loldaiga, where would we begin? Mining I think mining is a devolved function, so that means it is within county government. But you've removed borders from these conservancies, meaning now they transit a number of counties. So how is the county government of Isiolo? Is the county government of Isiolo capable of, even being able to do this mineral searching within these conservancies? Like can they go to Lower Downs Conservancy and start prospecting for minerals there? I doubt no.
Wow.
There is no law or framework that they will, even though the constitution allows for this devolved function, then they will be at the mercies of the owners of these conservancies, because one, this is private land. And then secondly, if this is private land and the government wants to, oil or gold has been discovered within, let's say, Borana Conservancy. So that means if the government has, through NLC, to do a compulsory acquisition of this land, you have to adequately, as the law provide, compensate this owner. So would we be able, would the county government of Laikipia be able to adequately compensate the owners of Borana Conservancy for these minerals within their land? So it becomes wholly impossible legally.
But let me ask, you keep mentioning these conservancies and they have very catchy names, all Pejeta, all Jogu, all Jogi, they have very
the
catchy.
name is yours, the money is theirs, and they don't care if you keep the name, but they can keep the money. They don't even care about the meanings of some. They even don't know, for instance. Like Loldaiga used to mean, is a Maasai name meaning where you look to when you want to see the signs of the rain coming. But I doubt whether Robert Wells really knows the meaning of Loldaiga. But if you have an African name, it becomes very good for the marketing part of it, So someone sitting in New York and reading Loldaiga, Loldaiga sounds everything game drive about it and African about it. Unlike you now going to a game drive in a conservancy named Yorkshire. Yorkshire doesn't seem like a place you would want to
it's
go.
not catchy.
Yeah.
So you can own, you chukueni jina, pesa ni yetu.
You keep the name, we can keep the money.
How many years are these leases, because I've not, or have you heard of a conservancy that the lease expired and it's been given back to the community? Do we have that?
In 2003, there was a heated activity by one organization that was called Osiligi, and Osiligi Maasais had come together and said in 2003, the 1911 Maasai agreement had now lapsed because they said it was for 99 years. So if you count 99 years from 1911, it means now that was ending at around early 2000. So they began a campaign. They actually came all the way to the local administration offices and staged demonstrations. And the kind of violence that was meted against them by state, even to date, is in their books. They never forgot that. Some of them were being arrested in Nanyuki, carried all the way to Nyahururu, and across other police stations. I think about 1,000 Maasais were rounded up. So it was a near crisis, them trying to bail each other from the police station. And that conversation ended. I think the approach was quite violent. They had taken up arms against those conservancies. And I think that's why, the agitation failed. But I think had they channeled it through legal means, perhaps they would have had more chances, because they were the first people to take them to court. As I pointed out in the 1913 case of Pasaloy Olegirisho. So still, there was a chance that if that case had gone to the Privy Council for appeal, they would have won.
So the conservancy is still in the hands of the previous owner?
Yeah, they are. They are, their cry and quest for the consideration of those agreements. Osirigi went defunct. It was, a lot of violence, state actors coming in to harass some of these members who are fronting this organization. Yeah, and that conversation has never been brought to question again. And I also think the approach was not right. And now that we have a better constitution, the 2010 constitution, I think they have better chances of bringing these historical land injustices to court. On the provision of Article 66(2). They should have an operation where the landowners, the white landowners, can keep the titles, but they can benefit from whatever comes from this land, including this investment in tourism, carbon credit, training. There should be an approach where communities benefit from this land, because let's not lie to ourselves. This land was not legitimately acquired. Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Period. All right. Thank you so much. Before I let you go, what books are you recommending to our audience?
Mine, at the moment, they are a little bit complex, especially climate financing and climate justice. But to begin with, we could begin with The Conservation Lie by Mordecai Ogada. That will be good.
That will be
starter.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Parting shot to our audience.
This is a homegrown audience, and I like it when Kenyans come and be able to learn, relearn, and unlearn. And I think this is a very good movement, and I'm happy when we have especially young Kenyans starting to question how normalcy of things, because what we've normalized is quite abnormal and has been to our detriment, to our disadvantage. So let's learn and capitalize on our new learning.
Beautiful. Thank you. Shall we wind up?
Yeah.
All right. Mine is to say thank you so much for just being such an incredible host and letting us, just explore Laikipia and getting to learn these things firsthand. I have a feeling there are so many people who just see the sign, I love Nanyuki, on your way. You just step out, you go there and you take the photos. And the roads outside are really good, but I challenge people to come Ukundani. Even if you're going to see some of these places, you're going to Olpejeta, take some time and just get off and just visit the natives so that you can be able to understand what majority of them are going through.
Correct. I'm happy, and actually, personally, I do love Nanyuki. It's near home. When John Denver sings "Country Home," the country, the road leading to Nanyuki is the one I think about. Yes. I really love this place. Regardless of all these issues that have been going on, Nanyuki is a lovely place. We are very welcoming, and we can even grow our own local tourism, and we now have to capitalize and see that our friends from Nairobi, when they bring money, from the city, that it also helps the natives here, and we would really appreciate this. We don't have to wait for people to come from New York to come and see rhinos here, but when they come, please leave a shilling to our local people here, and we appreciate.
Beautiful. What's your why?
My why? Well, I think I'm in love with what I do. I like working with communities, and sometimes I think I really don't have a choice, because not so many lawyers, or I've not seen advocates take such kind of matters before. Most of my clients are quite vulnerable, extremely vulnerable. These are not clients that you will find going to big law firms in Nairobi to seek legal help. So I think because most of them have not been able to access justice, that is the reason why the British Army has been able to get away with a number of all these violations. And I've walked a journey, and I am happy that one day some of these recommendations that we've been, fronting will be incepted, and yeah.
Beautiful. Go you. It's really amazing to have had this conversation.
The pleasure is mine. Yes. I really appreciate, and thank you so much. I'm a fan of LNN, and you have an amazing team, and thanks for also coming and assisting, the entire country to learn, relearn, and unlearn.
How can people connect with you?
They can find me on X. I'm a fan of X. I really find X to be enlightening, and I like it's not always that you agree with people on X, but I love that you can have conflicting ideas, and there's a way X gives these ideas, and people can be able to learn relearn and unlearn
unlearn.
from one another.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, guys. What a moment to learn and learn and relearn. Guys, I keep saying the more we have these thought-provoking conversations, the better. And now I want you to start questioning. Every time you hear carbon credits, every time you hear carbon markets, every time you hear this climate change nonsense, I really want you guys to pay attention to those hidden words inside some of these conversations. And as our amazing guest has said, check out Mordecai's and Barria's book, The Big Conservation Lie. And I hope you can also tell me on the comment section, what has your take home been? For me, it was enlightening just visiting these communities with my team, getting to see some of the places that they live in, getting to hear some of their thoughts, just getting to hear some of their cries. I do not want to live in a nation where someone is 80 and they started fighting for something in 1996, and now they've given up and they are saying, let my generation, the generation after me, let them fight. Like, we shouldn't be able to see these people. These are our parents, these are our grandpas, these are our brothers and sisters. To see them in such conditions, and guys still hoping that one day justice will prevail. For me, that was just, I honestly don't want to live in such a country. But I keep saying, one conversation at a time, we are the change we need. Hakuna mtu mwingine anakam kutusaidia. Ni sisi tu tujisaidie, and we can only do this by intentionally paying attention to some of these conversations. Connect with my guest on X. He's very much active there. His handles are on the screen right now. If you want to share your story with us, of course, info@lnn.digital. That's where you can be able to get hold of us. And if there's anything you can't comment here on the comment section, or if you want your comment to be private, or you want to share any details with us, use the same email, info@lnn.digital. Thank you to my team, Akina Muga Scholar, Joshua, EJ, for coming through, and the entire team at LNN. I hope we have another beautiful year of learning and relearning. My name is Lynn Ngugi. How about I see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. or 7 p.m. Bye.